It's Tuesday. This is Sits and Lieben. I started this week yesterday with a very thorough reading of Deuteronomy, the 31st chapter, because that was the assigned reading for the day on yesterday. Today's reading is Deuteronomy 32 through 34. In addition to those, we were assigned Psalms 31. I'm going to share with you my reflection on Deuteronomy 31 and 32, actually through 34. Then I'm going to share with you reflections on Psalm 31. In that way, I will be up to date on our daily devotional readings for this week. On tomorrow, our assigned devotional reading will be Joshua chapters 1 through 4 and Psalms 32 verses 1 through 5. Tomorrow is also Bible study night at 6 p.m. and the title of tomorrow's Bible lesson is God is All Powerful. We will look at 1 Kings, the 18th chapter, verses 20 through 21 and verses 30 through 39. The question must be asked, is there any power like the Lord's power? You know the answer. Let us begin with Deuteronomy, the 30 and 31st chapters. It is a blessing to return to God. If you have ever strayed away from God, or you have experienced a wilderness experience where you rebelled against God, or turned your back on God, it is a blessing to return to God. If you've gone through a period of singularness where you and your family have strayed against God, it is a blessing to have the opportunity to return to God. It is a blessing to hear His voice again in your life and to obey God's voice. It is a blessing to hear the voice of God in your life again after a period of not being able to hear His voice because of your own personal choices and disobedience. Deuteronomy 30 is very positive. It is very reaffirming. It talks about what a blessing it is for anyone's life to return to God and to hear His voice again. And there's so many benefits to being in God that are simply not available when you are outside of God's will, living according to your own purposes. One of my sayings is that you are too stressed to be blessed. This is an awful, miserable life filled with death, destruction, lies, and deceit. Deuteronomy 30 simply says, live, multiply, and be blessed. Choose life. What an affirming text. Deuteronomy 31 shows me something that I had not necessarily seen in God's character and God's nature. Deuteronomy 31 says, or helps this preacher to see that there are some things that you reserve for yourself. Well, those things ought to be, and they do belong to God and God's self. God tells Moses, you will never see the promised land. But God said, I'll be there. I will cross over into the promised land with the children of God. Moses had reserved that privilege for himself. There are some things that we have reserved for ourselves. We may not enjoy it today, but we plan to enjoy it one day. You may not live that long, God tells Moses. In fact, God tells Moses, you are definitely not going to live that long. But after you have gone on to glory, be rest assured that God will be there. Whatever that thing is that you have reserved for yourself, this text encourages me to enjoy the day. For this is a day that the Lord hath made. This text also encouraged me to appreciate the assignment and to fulfill it to the very fullest. This text encourages me today to do my very best with what God has given me today, and to recognize and realize that if God gives me another assignment, if God is so gracious, then that is His prerogative, but it is not my right, nor is it my privilege. nor can I demand anything from God at any time. However, what you desire above and beyond the blessing that God has already bestowed upon your life in the past and the present, or even in the future, uh, even if you are not there or I am not there to enjoy them in the physical presence, God will be there. It belongs to him anyway. And Moses gives us a taste of the afterlife because he tells the children of Israel, after I die, I will be there with you spiritually, even though you will be disappointed, disobedient physically. Deuteronomy 31 is good because it shows us how Moses trains his own replacement in Joshua. And the text is good because it encourages us not only to identify our replacement, who will replace us once we have gone to be with God, but it also tells us to train our replacement to do one thing. And that one thing is to follow God. Train your replacement to follow God. The text also encourages us to fear God, which means to respect him. Finally, then, this text places a value on children. It also helps us to identify the purpose of children in our lives. This text tells us that children are our legacy. Moses tells them that I know of your rebellion after I go to be with the Lord, and I know that you will eat, you will be filled, you will become fat, and you will turn against the will of God. Unfortunately, my brothers and sisters, we have seen this movie before. In fact, we have starred in this movie. We have been the executive director and the director. We've been the writer and the co-writer. We've been the main character. We've been involved in this story. That is why it's so good to return to God. It is so good to hear his voice again when we have been separated from him by our own choices and our own disobedience for too long. Psalms 31 declares strength in the face of persecution by our enemies. Friends, God never promised that we won't have enemies. God promises that our enemies will not prevail. God promises that our enemies, or God shows us that during such persecution, we become broken vessels. We must learn how to declare with all that we have in our lungs that I trust God. We should not be in a haste. When trouble comes, we should show by our actions that we trust God. We're not in a hurry. We know that God will deliver in God's own time. We should show the blessed assurance that we may not know exactly when God is going to come, but we are sure that he will be there. And when he arrives, he will be right on time. Lord have mercy. Finally, I want to say to you some thoughts on Psalms 32 through 34. I want to start by saying that God's work is perfect. Everything that God does is perfect. And God is perfect. But our work, what we do, it's imperfect. And us, we're imperfect too. Get over yourself. But even with that, God hovers over us like an eagle does the nest. Even with that, we are still the apple of God's eye. And even after that, we will still grow fat and reject God and choose other gods. That's what we do. I find this one final observation about God in this text. I enjoyed this text, obviously. I found that God would prefer for us to follow his lead. It would be so much easier, however, because we will follow his lead until we get full, fat, and spoiled. And history will show that we will reject him as soon as times are consistently good. I found that it was interesting that God did not cut the flow of his goodness off to his disrespectful and disobedient children. Rather, God seems to, interestingly enough, follow his children's lead into their disobedience. God gave them everything that they wanted. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? I find that there are seasons where God will give us the desires of our heart, even when those desires are evil. All pray with us. Pray for yourself first. But the wages of sin is still death in so many ways. We die unnecessarily. Unfortunately, we die early deaths in so many ways while mocking God the whole time as if we are going to win against God. But the truth of the matter is that God truly mocks our unholy life choices every day. How? By still providing for us while we live in sin. Lord have mercy, he's a good God. I felt as if God was on Always Is participating in some kind of mysterious scientific lab to see if we will follow his will or rebel against him. Even in our wickedness, God continues to prove that there's none more generous and none more loving than he is right now. God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. God bless you. God bless you. Those are my thoughts on this text. I'll join you tomorrow. I'll join you every day this week. If for no other reason, I'm so excited and feeling so blessed about the fact that God is going to give me another birthday. And I praise his holy name. I praise his holy name. I praise his holy name. There's a time in my life where I would spend my birthdays with my mother. I remember on the last birthday that I spent with her before she passed, she was in Dallas. I flew to Dallas to be with her on my birthday and her giving birthday. I recall I walked in the room where she lay and she saw me come in. She said, "Jeffrey, you're so wonderful. It's so nice of you." I'll never forget that. And I said, "Well, Mom, it was a big day for us, you know." And I didn't leave that room again until she left that room. We flew back to Cleveland, but that's a whole nother story. This is a day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad that God's given us assignment today. It's good to hear God's voice. It's good to be in God. It's good to live for God. Oh, bless the Lord, oh my soul, and all that is within me. Bless his holy name. Thank you for joining us. Join us again. Like the channel. Subscribe to the channel. Turn on the notifications so that when I come on tomorrow, you'll know. Thank you.